Hello and welcome back. This is episode 4 of the Import-Export series in which we cover file formats, and today we're looking at the OBJ format, one of the oldest and most widely supported ways to move static 3D models between applications. If you need something simple, predictable and universally compatible, OBJ is still a solid choice. So, what is it? OBJ is one of the oldest and most widely supported 3D formats. It stores vertices, faces, UVs, and normals. The materials live in a separate .mtl file, and the text file is human readable. So when would we use OBJ? OBJ is perfect for simple, clean geometry that is also static, as in no animation, and is useful even for 3D printing. The pros of OBJ is it's widely supported, it's predictable and simple, it stores UVs and materials, it's great for static mesh exportation, and is useful for multicolor 3D printing as well as regular 3D printing. The cons of OBJ is there is no animation support, the file sizes can be quite large, the materials can break if the .mtl goes missing or even gets deleted. So now that we've covered OBJ, let's look at it in an overview. It's a simple, widely supported mesh exchange format that stores geometry, normals, and UVs, but not necessarily animation. It's reliable for static models and 3D printing. So now, next up, I'll walk you through exporting an OBJ with correct UVs and materials, and how to prepare static assets for transfer. Okay, so now that we've gone over OBJ in theory, it's time to go over OBJ in practice. So just like all of our other file formats, I'm going to make a new collection called OBJ, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to import a cube and bring over the shader editor, and we're just going to call this cube UV and test. Something along that lines, because what we're going to do is image texture, bring that in, and then we're just going to have it called cube UV test. And then what we'll do is we'll use the blank UV grid. So there we go, textured, just like that, because OBJ seems to be quite a basic file format. Don't get me wrong, so if we reverse this normal, for example, by using Shift N, and one other thing that we need to do is if we bring this up to look at face orientation, we'll see that it is the wrong way around. So again, with OBJ, it basically stores vertices, which we've got here, we've got faces, which we've got here, we've got the UVs, which we have to test here, and we've got the normals, and then yeah, the material is basically this in a sense. So what we're going to do is just basically file and export this as an OBJ. So we'll make a new format or folder, we'll call this OBJ, we'll make sure it's set to selected only. -Z is forward and Y is up. In Blender, Y is typically forward and Z is up, so this is being generous for other 3D programs, I suppose, is a way to look at it. And then in geometries, yeah, we've got, you know, coordinates, normals, we've got our export per vertex colors. We can triangulate our mesh, which we don't need to do. We've got modifiers in case we word is subdivide the surface, for example. And we've got our PBR extension, so that's interesting, and we've got animation as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ramp up the metallic, lower the roughness, and up the specular, because it's quite recent that it's introduced the PBR aspect to it. And then yes, so metallic is up, rough down, specular up. We can move it on the X to animate, and then what we can do is go to frame 50 and move it all the way on the other side and put that there. So now we've got our animated cube. It'll be very choppy, primarily because we've got our other animations and all that in our Alembic. So I believe that we've turned our Alembic off. Yep. So we've got our hair in our other one, so sphere, if we just hide that, now if we click play, there you go, so just like that. So yeah, be careful, there's a word of warning, so that's a treat in this episode. On the off chance that you miss all the other ones, you've learned something extra in this episode. So what we can do is we can call this our cube animated OBJ, something along them lines, and then what we can do is file, export, and OBJ. Go into our OBJ file format, select it only, and then we can go obj.obj. So if we go over to our playground file now, and we bring in our OBJ file, so file, import, OBJ, and our OBJ. We'll see that we've basically got our box here, and if we click play, nothing happens. But if we bring over our shader editor, because we're already in our material preview, we'll see that we should have our cube UV test. Hasn't been carried over. So metallic is up, roughness is down, specular is up as well. So we've carried those over, which are guaranteed. So what we need to do is if we go back into this and go to our texture paint and save this image as our cube UV test and save as. And then if we also go to file, export, and activate animation and PBR extensions, even though we already had that. In fact, it even tells us there that it accepts roughness, metallic, sheen, coat, anisotropy, I've butchered that word probably, and transmission. So yeah, we can have our material groups, vertex groups, stuff, and if we go back to our playground and exit that and import and OBJ, this will be what we get. So the animation is actually just a series of where it is at what frame. So if we just change this to yes, we need to go up to the filters here, and then if we sort it by extension, so we've got all the OBJs here. So our OBJ at frame 1 is there, and what you can see now is we've carried over our actual image texture as well. We're in our playground. And if we import our number 50, is it? Like so, you'll see that we basically just have, and then if you just want to see the extreme of it, what we've done is we've basically just imported, not all of those, we've basically just got all of the frames individually, like so. It's not actually animated, we've just got all of these all at once. So if we delete that, so that is its version of animation, I suppose, and as we saw, it carried over the texture that it had because it's referenced here. So that's because we saved it externally. So what we can do is if we go to our file types and we pull out a different one. So if we come over here and we split this in half, so we've got our cube UV test on the top, and then if we come to the bottom and then we do another one and we call this cube UV bottom test, and what we'll do is we'll make this one a image texture, and what we can do is we can call this cube UV bottom test, like so, and then what we'll do is we'll make this a color grid. And then we've got our two halves. So this is going to showcase that we can actually carry two material groups. So if we go to File and Export and go to our Wavefront OBJ, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete all of these because this just takes up quite a bit of space. And it, yep, there we go, worked. And what we can do is make sure everything is still selected. We're going to turn animation off. And then what I want to do is remove the MTL. So if we have obj.obj, go over to our playground, and then if we delete this and import our OBJ like so, and we have our 2 underneath. So like we had before, what we need to do is we need to go to our file type, we need to make sure we've got our UV cube bottom test, and we need to save it as our UV bottom test, because remember, OBJ is referencing. So if we go back to our playground and then we import our OBJ like so, if we remove this one, so we have got our bottom test. So let's just delete this one again, and if we go back to our file types and image save as, and we've got our cube bottom test along with our cube UV test, and then yeah, if we metallic up, roughness down, specular down. In fact, we'll do the opposite, we'll go up, up, down. What we should have is, if we save this and then file export OBJ, and then we export our OBJ, material, PBR extension, and then export, we should get this into our playground. Realistically, we should file, import. In fact, what we'll do is we'll clean up as well. We'll remove our 56 meshes and 58 materials. What we can do is import OBJ, our OBJ. There we go. Right, so now we've got the bottom. So that could just be a matter of us having to play references, but basically, hopefully, that hasn't been too confusing. So we can carry two materials at the same time. Our face should be the wrong way, like we can see here. And yeah, basically that's it. We've got our UVs, we've got our normals, we've got our multiple textures. The only thing we didn't necessarily cover is if we come over here and we go File and Export and OBJ, we didn't necessarily cover the export per vertex colors. And if you want to see that, what this is a matter of doing is going into our vertex paint, and if we go and color, say, this one green, if we color that one red, this one blue, this one blue, if it lets us. So we have red, green, blue, and then what we can do is we can back out of this object mode, file, export, OBJ, and then OBJ again. And if we do our colors, overwrite, and come to our playground, then if we import our OBJ, refresh, and then if we go into our regular colors and go to vertex paint, you'll see that we've brought our vertex colors along. And just to show that that is what that is, what we can do is we can do file, export, OBJ +1, turn off colors, and then we shouldn't get this in our playground. So if we import OBJ1, there you go, we don't have it there. So hopefully you've learned something. I know I have. I've probably learned more about OBJ than I thought, because I used to prefer FBX over OBJ, and I'm realizing now that OBJ probably would have done enough in terms of what I used to use it for, well, use FBX for. So yeah. So let's now showcase our 3D printing ability with OBJs. So if we just hide everything for now, and then we bring in Suzanne like we did last time, and then we're just going to rotate it towards us, and then let's just throw some devil horns on her, for example. So we'll just extrude along normals, extrude up, and then let's extrude again, and then scale, something like that. Yep, so we've got that, and then what we're going to do is we're going to scale it down so that she'll actually fit on a 3D print bed, so that'll do. And then what we can do is go File, Export, OBJ, and then 3D print Suzanne horns, overwrite, and then we can open up our 3D slicer, and we can basically just drag her over like so. And there she is. Then the other thing to prove that this is how it works is if I go and try and drag in our FBX, for example, we'll find that it should tell us when I find it, even though it's just a box, it will say can't import basically. Now we can move on to our next file type, which will be Stanford PLY. So see you there.